Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes hotter than pancakes. You're tuning into our weekly upload for March 14th, 2022. I'm Chris Conkling, your host, and as always, I'm joined by one of my best friends,
Brian Dupree. How's it going, man?
It's going well. A lot of crazy things have been happening in the world over the course of the week. We're going to talk about some of them to varying degrees of importance. That's all I'll say, I guess. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. This is kind of an unexpected choice for what we're covering this week, but it worked out really well that we were both watching this. And once you had told me you were watching it, I flew through the available episodes. We'll get into the after party later, but yes. I was really excited that we got to watch this one.
Yes, as Brian mentioned, we're going to be covering another murder mystery this week. A couple weeks ago, we covered Death on the Nile. This week, we're going to be covering the new Disney Plus show, The Afterparty, from Christopher Miller. We're going to get to that later in the episode, though.
Apple TV Plus.
What did I say?
Disney Plus.
I'm sorry, Apple TV Plus. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the correction. We're going to start the weekly upload as we always do, though, with Brian's Wacky News Corner.
Welcome back, everyone. So we've talked about this before, but the first teaser trailer for the new Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus show just dropped this week. So before we get into our opinions on that, I'll just rehash the information. The plot summary for this show: the Jedi Master contends with the consequences of his greatest defeat, the downfall and corruption of his one-time friend and apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, who turned to the dark side as evil Sith Lord Darth Vader. So this is directed by Deborah Chow and stars Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, as well as Joel Edgerton and Bonnie Peace, reprising their roles from the prequel trilogy as well. And I actually just watched this trailer for the first time a couple hours ago, and I feel like I don't have a lot of context for some of the deep cut references to Inquisitors and things like this. But this trailer was very vibey and kind of reminded me of Blade Runner in terms of aesthetics, which Star Wars and Blade Runner, I'm there for it. The fact this show, great. Right? And the fact this show's only going to be 6 episodes is a big selling point for me as well. They clearly have a contained story that hopefully will be that, just contained. I believe this takes place, let me get it right.
10 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, and will be premiering on May 25th of this year. What did you think of this trailer, Chris?
Brian, as I've mentioned before, Obi-Wan Kenobi is my most anticipated show of 2022. So finally getting to see some footage of the actual show made me very excited. I cannot wait to see what they do with this show. From what we know, Ewan McGregor has said that the show is kind of starting off, like I said, 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. Obi-Wan is still residing on Tatooine, watching over Luke Skywalker as he's growing up, but he's kind of like a broken man. He's failed to protect the Jedi Order. He's failed to stop his apprentice from turning to the dark side. He's kind of lost faith in everything that he wants to believe in. And I think that's a great place for us to start so we can build on that. You know, and the trailer shows a lot of awesome things. We get Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen kind of staring down an Inquisitor, which is super cool. Like, what a badass that guy is. We get to see Inquisitors, as I mentioned. For those that don't know, the Inquisitors were prominent characters in Star Wars Rebels, another Star Wars cartoon. You know, we've talked multiple times on this show about how live action Star Wars doesn't always care if viewers have seen some of the more, I don't want to say supplementary content, but some of the other content in various mediums of the Star Wars franchise. So if you do want to kind of build up some knowledge base prior to May 25th, I highly recommend watching Star Wars Rebels. That way you get an idea of like who the Inquisitors are. At the very base level, Darth Vader has assembled a team to hunt down Jedi. You know, Jedi residing after Order 66. And that's what the Inquisitors do. They go out, they're a little force sensitive. They're not quite Sith, but they hunt down and kill Jedi as they find them. So it's just, Brian, you're going to say?
No. I was just going to, in terms of him putting together the Inquisitors, it's him that's the voiceover in this trailer? Is it Darth Vader that we're hearing?
The voiceover seems to be the Grand Inquisitor, who is the character we see in the trailer with like the white face and the red on his head. He has the spinning dual lightsaber. He's the head of the Inquisitor team. And he was also a character in Star Wars Rebels. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited to see what the show has to offer. Hayden Christensen coming back to portray Vader. I can only assume, and I've mentioned this before on the show, they wouldn't bring Hayden Christensen back to just be Darth Vader, considering that character wears a mask constantly. So many people have worked on Vader to bring that character to life. Various stuntmen, James Earl Jones doing the voice. So if you're going to pay Hayden Christensen, I have to imagine we're going to see some scenes between Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, maybe flashbacks before he became Vader. Maybe we get like a cracked Vader mask at some point. It's like a burned Hayden Christensen underneath. All of it, I'm just super excited about, if you can't tell. So yeah, it was great to finally see some footage from this show. I'm hoping that it is much better than the Book of Boba Fett, but we will see.
Yeah, we all enjoyed that on various levels, but it's a relatively low bar compared to the other stuff that they've been putting out recently. I do like this idea of, because obviously in A New Hope, we know that Obi-Wan has been hiding out in this place for a long time, but it does seem like everyone knows him. And with the Grand Inquisitor's monologue over the course of this trailer, we get the sense that Jedis just can't help themselves from doing good. So kind of just like small scale, very similar to Mandalorian in some ways. Yeah. But this is a character who we know has built up his reputation, not as a Jedi, but as a good person, a recluse on Tatooine. So I think there's a lot to dig into here in fun ways.
Definitely. And, just to get back to that Joel Edgerton scene as him with Uncle Owen standing down against the Inquisitor, I love how despite his opinion of Obi-Wan Kenobi that we see in A New Hope, it doesn't seem that he holds him in very high regard. He's still unwilling to give up his location because he knows what his mission is in regards to protecting his nephew, So commendable for Uncle Owen.
Oh, it's definitely going to be cool to have him back for sure.
Without a doubt.
So yeah, if you haven't seen that, check out the first teaser trailer for Obi-Wan Kenobi. That'll be coming to Disney Plus in May. Next piece of news, Pete Davidson has been announced to play a fictional version of himself in a new comedy series from producer Lorne Michaels. And it's got a temporary name called Bupkis right now. Davidson will also be a co-writer on it with David Searis as well as Judah Miller. And it's supposed to be in the same style of kind of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm sort of show, where similarly Larry David's playing himself, dealing with the celebrity world.
Right, like a caricature version of who he is in real life. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. I haven't seen Judd Apatow's The King of Staten Island, but this is something that Davidson also co-wrote and from all accounts seemed to be pretty good. I think it was relatively well received.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so you had seen that one. So yeah, he's definitely been getting his acting chops in terms of movies. And I don't know how you feel about this show. I think our co-host, Christian, who, as we always say, is very missed right now on paternity leave. Definitely. I believe he said something along the lines of Pete Davidson seems like someone who was smacked in the face with a bag of marijuana at all times or something like that. Hey, no hating on Pete Davidson. I have nothing against the guy. Not as big of an SNL fan these days as I know you are, Chris. You've probably seen a lot more of him than I have. But what do you think about this news? Would you see another Pete Davidson led show?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Pete Davidson. Like I said, I really enjoyed The King of Staten Island, which is also kind of like a pseudo autobiographical film for him.
Right.
In regards to like his dad being a firefighter during 9/11 and all of that stuff. I'm a huge fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm. My wife and I are currently rewatching Curb on HBO Max. I introduced her to season 11 and then she liked it so much we went back and started from the very beginning. So awesome. I think a Curb Your Enthusiasm Pete Davidson mashup of him navigating the Hollywood world and being a celebrity in 2022 is a really interesting concept, especially considering that he's much younger than Larry David. He's going to have a different perspective on the industry. So yeah, this project seems really cool and I'll definitely be tuning in for it.
Yeah, so that is the project currently called Bupkis that will be starring Pete Davidson. And obviously not far into development yet, but we'll keep you guys in the loop as that gets closer to coming out. All right. So we cover a lot of content from Disney and Marvel Studios, who's now owned by Disney.
We just gushed about
Obi-Wan Kenobi, trailer, obviously, and maybe covering something from them next week. But there's been a lot of news this week and over the past couple of months. We both live in Florida. Our governor, Ron DeSantis, is very close to signing in a piece of legislation that's been termed largely by its critics the Don't Say Gay bill. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to read some of the verbiage from this bill just to give some context before going into this story about Disney and Pixar specifically. So the bill states that, quote, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. It also says the measure would require districts to, quote, adopt procedures for notifying a student's parent if there is a change in the student's services or monitoring related to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, something which advocates for the LGBTQ community say could functionally cause schools to start outing their children to their parents. And as we know, not everyone is okay with their children being this way or accepting of this. And this could cause a lot of problems for kids in practice if this passes and gets widely implemented. There are other states who are implementing a lot of things against around trans students as well that are really dangerous and terrifying about telling parents about this and also making it illegal to help your children through these sorts of things. So there's a lot to dig into here. We're not typically a political podcast, but this has affected Pixar and Disney just this week because Pixar has come out after Bob Chapek basically played kind of a both sides stance, made a statement saying that the biggest impact the company can make is creating a more inclusive world through inspiring content that they produce, while simultaneously still being a donor to a lot of politicians who are in support of bills like this one specifically and others like it. So employees from Pixar have come together and put a letter out that has documented that, according to them, Disney corporate executives have demanded cuts from, quote, nearly every moment of overtly gay affection, regardless of when there is protest from both the creative teams and executive leadership at Pixar. So this is kind of a huge thing that we really don't have time to dive into every single instance. I guess in 2020, their movie Onward had a single character who was gay, and there was one line in passing about her
girlfriend
wife.
In passing.
And this line was removed from cuts in certain states and still banned in other places because of this entirely. They also released a short film called Out in 2020 about a gay man who struggles with coming out to his parents. So a very, very limited selection of representation in this regard here. Chapek has announced that he's going to pledge $5 million to the Human Rights Campaign and other LGBTQ rights organizations, as well as meeting with Ron DeSantis to discuss this, which, I mean, come on, whatever, as if that's going to change anything. Yeah, it's clearly trying to save face. The Human Rights Campaign has basically denied accepting this pledge until he does something more, as they say, until meaningful action is taken to combat the legislation. So basically putting it back in his face, like, look, you're not just going to save face with throwing money at this problem when you're functionally supporting the people who are creating this. So Chris, I know neither of us are particular fans of our current governor, Ron DeSantis, and very much opposed this sort of legislation that, even though it's sold as something that is trying to protect kids, functionally brings a lot of shame to people who are queer and are anything straying from what conservative Christians basically think is acceptable in terms of gender and gender identity and sexuality. So how do you feel about this? And it's about time, we need to counteract some of our love for the content that this company produces with the functional negatives that they sometimes can bring. Obviously, we both live very close to Disney World, so it makes sense that they would have a big hand in our politics here. But sorry, how do you feel about the Don't Say Gay bill and Chapek's response to this?
All of it's incredibly infuriating. And in terms of what Disney's doing, Bob Chapek talking about inclusivity, his actions are entirely hypocritical from what is coming out of his mouth, and it's just really gross, to be perfectly honest. In terms of handling this whole situation, Disney has tried to ride the line between both communities, because they're a big corporation and they don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers because they want money from everybody, and that's just not acceptable. That I think for this particular thing, there's a huge swath of Disney fans in this community that are LGBTQ plus, and they need to support those people. Chapek claims that Disney's had a long history of supporting the community, and yet they really only started doing stuff. It's 2022, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I believe the first time they did any Pride events was in 2019 in Paris only as well. Right.
Oh, wow. Oh, I know, man.
Yeah,
look at
really
that.
Ahead of the curve on that one, Disney. Yeah.
So without getting really angry again on our podcast, I'll just say that it is despicable, basically. In terms of the actual bill being passed here in Florida, as Brian mentioned, we're not usually a political podcast. We try to focus on the things that bring people joy, but it's ludicrous to me that they would take this stance and still talk about heterosexual things between the grades of kindergarten and third grade. It's just incredibly alienating. What about the kids that have LGBTQ plus parents?
Right.
How are they supposed to talk about their family life in the classroom and feel safe to do so? It's very aggravating.
Like you said, it's despicable. And not only that, it's legislation that's attempting to address a problem that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Right? It's completely a falsehood. And not only will this affect the students being able to talk about, like you said, obviously at this age, most students aren't openly talking about sexuality, but if their parents are gay, talking about having two mothers or talking about having two fathers, does the teacher have to shut that down if the teacher is gay?
Right.
Or gender queer? Are they not allowed to talk about, say things like my wife or my husband? Is that going to be deemed inappropriate for students?
Seems ludicrous to me.
And I went to public school in Florida, and I didn't get any sort of sexual education until 5th grade, personally.
Right.
So
it doesn't even matter and I mean, they have talked about the bill being extended to higher grade levels as well in the future.
They add or age appropriate, which seems very vague and open-ended and could apply to, right, like you said, past that age group.
But yeah, it's horrible.
Truly. And check out the article that we have in the show notes. You can read the whole letter from the Pixar employees that lays out their understandable grievances. And, hopefully this sort of stuff will be overturned eventually. And hopefully Chapek will learn from this and actually take steps to, be more supportive of this community that clearly, to a large degree, wants to support Disney and their content, and obviously people that work for them do. So yeah, that is the situation with the Don't Say Gay bill and Disney and Pixar. Definitely plenty to read about there, especially if you're living in Florida. So yeah, moving on to some stuff that's coming out this week. On the TV front, we have DMZ coming to HBO Max this Thursday. So the plot of this show is a civil war breaks out in America and Manhattan becomes a demilitarized zone. So this is actually based on the comic of the same name by Brian Wood and Riccardo Burchielli. and stars Rosario Dawson, who has lost her son in the context of this war starting, and the plot is driven by her trying to find her son, I believe. Rosario Dawson, great actress. She seems to be pretty amazing in everything that I've seen her in. A big selling point of this show, it's a mini series. It's only 4 episodes. Huge selling point. The trailer itself looks kind of similar to other pseudo post-apocalyptic shows that we've seen, but at 4 episodes on HBO Max, this seems like something that's a pretty easy sell for me.
Very digestible.
Very digestible. And this is a comic that I've heard good things about prior. So probably will give me the impetus to actually read this comic, check out the adaptation at some point. So yeah, that's DMZ. That'll be coming to HBO Max this Thursday. Coming out this Friday, we have, I did want to shout out that the whole thing is written by Robert Patino, and 1 episode is directed by Ava DuVernay, as well as the other 3 by Ernest Dickerson.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, very awesome. And those are, I think all those are coming out on March 17th, all 4 episodes at once. Yep. On Friday, coming to Hulu, we have Life and Beth. So after a sudden incident, Beth, a seemingly successful woman with a long-term relationship and steady career, takes a look back at her past to see who she wants to become. This is a comedy drama starring and directed by Amy Schumer, also stars Violet Young, Michael Cera, and Yamaneika Saunders and Michael Rappaport. And this is a show that's not really my bread and butter in terms of what I'm looking for. Amy Schumer is about to co-host the Oscars with a few other people as well. Michael Cera feels like he hasn't been in a lot of stuff lately, and that was kind of a big draw. I was like, oh, Michael Cera coming back to do a semi-romantic comedy, and he looks hilarious in the trailer. There was a couple of moments that made me laugh here.
I will say, Brian, I'm a big fan of Michael Cera. I've loved him since Arrested Development. He's perpetually funny in everything that he's in. But he has this, basically the Tom Holland syndrome, where he
even with the facial hair looks
even
not
with the beard,
good.
even with the beard, he's trying so hard to be age appropriate, because he's our age. But I look at him and I'm like a perpetual teenager, I just can't get it out of my head. I want to so bad because he's such a talented person. But it's so hard to see him juxtaposed against Amy Schumer in this romantic comedy-esque role. Recently in an interview, Amy Schumer accidentally called him out for being a father. It was something that he was kind of trying to keep under wraps.
Oh, geez.
His personal life, and we're calling him out again on the Pop-O-Holics. Great. But even that is so hard to digest in my brain that he has a family, and is a father himself. Anyway, I don't know if you experience the same thing, but that's the first hurdle for Life and Beth.
Yeah, no,
despite how talented everybody in the show is.
I definitely, when I saw him with that beard, I was like, something doesn't track here. He's so baby face even with that beard.
It's almost like a weird uncanny valley effect.
Right. Obviously Arrested Development, super bad. Some of his iconic roles are for when he was young and definitely playing younger than he even was probably at that time. But yeah, that's Life and Beth. That'll be premiering on Hulu this Friday. Moving into some movies that are coming out. A type of movie that doesn't get made that often anymore. And as we see, this one has been dumped on Hulu, unfortunately. But it was originally going to have a theatrical release. But this is a new erotic psychological thriller from director Adrian Lyne, based on the 1957 novel of the same name, Deep Water, by Patricia Highsmith. It's written by Zach Helm and Sam Levinson. Levinson, huge right now with Euphoria. He did Malcolm and Marie as well. And it stars Ben Affleck and Anna de Armas, as well as Tracy Letts, Lil Rel Howery, and many more. This trailer, I don't want to say too much about the plot of this. I think I read a little more than I even wanted to know about the plot. But this trailer basically amounts to an off-screen hand job happening between these two characters. I don't know if you realize that watching this, but I'm fairly certain that's what's happening. And I was immediately sold on this. I've been talking a lot about the sexiness of
Ana
movies.
de Armas is like, Ben Affleck, you will never leave me. And here's why. The audience can't see it right now. but
very much implied.
You love me, yes?
So yeah, this follows a married couple who may be going through some issues, and plot things happen that make this a psychological thriller. But these days, I'm very down for attractive people in sexy situations, a little bit of thrill. Come on, say less. I'm there. I wish I could see this on a huge screen, but I will definitely be checking this out on Hulu. What did you think of this trailer? And did you get the same vibe that I did from it, or?
I am only now piecing it together now that you've said it. I'm replaying the trailer in my brain, and I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's classic cinema.
Brian, what's not to love about Deepwater? Ana de Armas, Ben Affleck, a little bit of sexy thriller. This is definitely something my wife and I are going to watch. We just recently watched Death on the Nile a couple of weeks ago. Like, this is kind of in the same vein, not quite a murder mystery or whodunit, but
right.
Ben Affleck was great in Gone Girl as well, which is also, I don't know, not quite as sexy as this particular film's going to be, I think. Maybe some
sexiness.
But yeah, he's dated a lot of crazy women in film. And I'm excited for this movie. It looks good.
Yeah, so that's Deepwater. That'll be on Hulu this Friday. Something that's coming to theaters, we have Umma. The summary of this one, it's a supernatural horror. Amanda and her daughter living a quiet life on an American farm. But when the remains of her estranged mother arrive from Korea, Amanda becomes haunted by the fear of turning into her own mother. This is written and directed by Iris K. Shim and stars Sandra Oh, Fievel Stewart, Dermot Mulroney, and Odia Rush, as well as many more. Has Sam Raimi as an executive producer, very much an icon in the horror space.
Definitely.
I know this is very much not your type of movie, Chris, generally, but Sandra Oh, always great in everything she does. This looks sort of typical in terms of plot-wise, small scale, semi-supernatural horror with obvious implications about dealing with the death of your parents, as well as the fear of becoming your parents. The trailer is very on the nose of don't become your mother,
right?
Which is a little bit silly, but
you know, not only the fear of becoming your parents, but also the strained relationships mothers and daughters experience.
Right.
You know, yes. I've always said, Brian, that while I'm not a fan of the horror genre as a whole, my favorite horror films are the ones that are trying to illustrate, you know, some type of human issue, you know, and I think Umma is that type of horror movie. So despite not being a fan of horror, this is a movie that I actually really want to see because of the subject matter. It looks good. Brian, are you going to see this movie?
I'm definitely planning on it. It's interesting. I've heard some critics kind of talking about it. I hadn't heard about it. I hadn't seen trailers until I heard people talking about it and then looked it up to see that it was coming out this week. But yeah, this is an easy sell for me. And especially with how relatively little is coming into theaters right now, this will be an easy one that I could probably see with 4 or 5 other people in the theater in the coming weeks. And we'll definitely let you guys know how that is. So that is Umma, that will be in theaters this Friday. Another one we have coming out that has been, I've seen probably 3 or 4 times the trailer for this one in the theaters this year. This is called The Outfit. It's a crime drama directed by Graham Moore in his directorial debut, and he co-wrote it with Jonathan McClain, and it stars an ensemble cast of Mark Rylance, Zoe Dutch, Johnny Flynn, Dylan O'Brien, Nikki Amuka Bird, and Simon Russell Beale, and the plot centers around an English tailor played by Mark Rylance in Chicago, whose primary customers are a family of vicious gangsters. He may or may not come into the possession of who knows what, and the dangerous people who he has decided to deal with all want this thing. It seems very much like small scale, nearly all set in one location. Doesn't look like the most original movie ever, but for the sort of movie that it is, looks like it could be fun. Mark Rylance, we saw him in Don't Look Up recently, where he was playing some sort of character. I imagine he's going to be significantly better.
What a great way to describe that character.
we don't have to rehash any of that. But Rylance is, he's a solid actor, and I'm sure he'll hold this movie together. That is The Outfit. That'll also be in theaters this Friday. All right, the last movie that's coming to theaters this Friday is X, the latest erotic slasher film written, directed, and edited by Ty West. It stars Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, Martin Henderson, Scott Mescudi, and Brittany Snow. The premise for this is, at a secluded farmhouse in Texas, a film crew arrives to shoot an adult film. Their hosts, a reclusive elderly couple, takes a special interest in their young guests, and things may turn out not exactly how they expected. This is going to premiere at South by Southwest on the 13th, which will pretty much be when this episode comes out. And yeah, then it'll be in theaters the following Friday. Kid Cudi being in this movie was kind of a big sell for me. Jenna Ortega was really great in the latest Scream sequel, Scream 5. I've never seen any movies by Ty West, but since this movie's been coming out, a lot of people have shouted him out as a really great director. So someone that I'm definitely going to start digging into some of his previous work as well. But that's his latest, called X, that'll be coming to theaters this Friday. And that wraps it up for the news this week.
Brian, once again, you delivered like an 85% wacky Brian's Wacky News Corner. We talked about some serious stuff in there. In the middle.
Got in a good bit of sexiness this week, too.
We did. There was some sexiness. So great job. You did it.
Thank you.
As we always do, loyal listeners and viewers, we're going to move right into the Pop-O-Holics Community Feedback Corner. Welcome back to the Pop-O-Holics Community Feedback Corner, loyal listeners. In this section of the show, we take care of some housekeeping for the Pop-O-Holics. We talk about our upcoming Throwback Thursday episode over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics. We go over any poll results that we have over on our Twitter @Pop-O-Holics during the week. And then if we've received any 5-star written reviews on either Spotify or Apple Music, we will read them here on the show. So if you want your review to be read on the show, again, head over to Spotify or Apple Music, rate us 5-star, and then write a review. We hugely appreciate it. It helps the show get seen. So thank you. We do have a Throwback Thursday episode coming up, Brian. We just finished re-releasing our 2019 October Creepy Clown Month over on our YouTube channel. Last week, we talked about the 2019 Wrinkles the Clown documentary, which was a very interesting watch. And this week, we're going to be kicking off our 2019 November month, which, when it comes to November, we always try to figure out how can we kind of center movies around Thanksgiving or food or family if there's not something huge in pop culture coming out. And I remember in 2019, we were very focused on food. So this week on our Throwback Thursday episode, we're going to be re-releasing our conversation of the 2014 film Chef, directed and starring Jon Favreau, as well as many others. This was a really sweet movie from what I remember. Do you remember anything about our conversation of this movie, Brian, that you want to point out?
Not really specifically about the conversation, but I had never seen this movie until we watched it for the show. And Jon Favreau, Scarlett Johansson, like you said, it's just super sweet, and also gives the very intelligent advice that if you're a good cook, you can get attractive ladies, maybe not being who are maybe out of your league, even if you're a good chef. But no, this movie was just absolutely heartwarming and really sweet. And a nice look into, it kind of almost makes me think a little bit of Pig, just in the way someone stepping away from the more high class, seemingly high class elements of fine dining and getting into the food truck life. Something that
less hunting for a stolen pig, though, in Chef.
Yes, a lot
also,
more sweetness.
Much less Nicolas Cage in Chef. No Nicolas Cage at all, in fact.
Very unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
I loved this movie, and this is something that I definitely need to come back to at some point, because it was a real treat.
Me as well. Maybe we'll do so we can watch our Throwback Thursday episode with our loyal viewers on Thursday. So remember, head on over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics this Thursday to check out that conversation. Of course, like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future content as well. With that, Brian, we're going to go into some poll results. Last week, we reviewed The Batman, Matt Reeves' new film, The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson. And one of the questions we asked at the end of our conversation was whether or not everyone we had on the show at that time, James Barnes, Christian returned for that episode, whether or not they thought the Riddler knew that the Batman was Bruce Wayne at the end of that movie. There's a great interrogation scene. Well, I guess I should have put up a spoiler bumper. Spoilers for The Batman, if you haven't seen it yet. There's a great interrogation scene at the end of the movie between Batman and the Riddler in Arkham. And the movie presents the situation in one way where you kind of believe that the Riddler doesn't know the Batman is Bruce Wayne. But I've heard many great arguments for the contrary, that the Riddler does know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. He's kind of just keeping it a little close to the chest. We put this out to all of our Twitter followers. And thank you again for everybody who participated in the poll. 63% of you think that, yes, the Riddler does know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. I'm not surprised.
Wow.
I was expecting it to be a little bit of a closer race because I think the movie definitely presents a lot of evidence to the contrary. But this makes sense to me. How do you feel about these results, Brian?
I am actually pretty surprised by this because I think the movie very much tries to point you in the other direction, even though it does a bit of a pump fake where you at first think he does. I heard some compelling cases from both you and James, both made compelling cases each way. And going into the next movie, I would not be surprised if it turns out that he did know and he's using this as kind of a card to blackmail Bruce Wayne. So I'm surprised by this because I definitely came away thinking that he did not know with my first viewing of the movie.
If he does know, it wouldn't be a huge departure from the comic books. The Riddler has discovered that Batman is Bruce Wayne in the comics. And similarly, he has kind of kept it to himself. He kind of likes lording this information over the rest of Gotham's rogues gallery. He always has to be the smartest in the room. So at least in terms of character, it makes sense that regardless of whether it's Paul Dano in the Batman or the Riddler in the comic books, that he would keep this information close to him if he knew it. So I think it could go either way in the future. We'll see if Matt Reeves even tackles this going forward with this particular version of Batman. But again, thank you so much for everybody who participated in our poll. We try to get polls out at least once a month. We did 2 this month. A lot of Batman conversation going on. But you can follow us on Twitter at Pop-O-Holics. We are on Instagram at Pop-O-Holicscast. You can email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com if you have any recommendations for what we can cover in the future, guests you want to have on the show, all that good stuff. We love hearing from you guys. Brian, with that, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about our main topic, which is the new Apple TV Plus show, The Afterparty.
Hey, party people! Big ups to Hill Mount High. We started at the upper middle, and now we here. But for tonight, Mikasa... I mean, you know how the rest of that goes. Whoa! We gonna live forever!
How did this all go so wrong?
Pop star, actor, and celebrity humanitarian Xavier was found dead tonight. His body discovered on the cliff during an after party for his high school reunion.
This is a murder.
That was from the trailer of the new Apple TV Plus show, The Afterparty, created by Christopher Miller with a score by Daniel Pemberton, starring a whole bunch of great comedians: Tiffany Haddish, Sam Richardson, Zoe Chow, Ike Barinholtz, Ben Schwartz, Ilana Glazer, Jamie Demetriou, Dave Franco, John Early, and many more. Huge talent in regards to this cast. The premise of the show is when a high school reunion's after party ends in a death, everyone is a suspect. A detective grills the former classmates one by one, uncovering potential motives as each tells their version of the story, culminating in a shocking truth. So Brian and I are going over another whodunit You know, a couple weeks ago, Brian, we just talked about Death on the Nile. I brought that up a couple times in the first half of the show. We both really enjoyed that movie. I think we're a fan of the genre. Do you have any thoughts about the Afterparty prior to going into our non-spoiler thoughts about the Afterparty?
Murder mysteries, always a go-to. I watched Only Murders in the Building last year. That was one of my favorite shows. You said Death on the Nile was great, and now this one. I'm just like, this is the most of this kind of thing I've probably ever watched in this amount of time at this point. So I'm very much in the bag for this sort of show. And as you noted that I hadn't heard about, this got greenlit for a second season, which
on March 2nd. Continue.
No, with this sort of show, it seems like the type of thing that could very easily just be bookended. And this show has a definitive end. But with these characters, I would love to continue going down the murder mystery path with these folks. Yeah,
Christopher Miller was originally planning a film for this script. It was called The Reunion. He was working on it in early 2010s, but then his commitment to the Lego movie with Lord and to 22 Jump Street kind of got in the way of them making The Reunion. And, the longer time passed, the further they got away from making the film, until finally it was developed into a series. They changed the title to The Afterparty, and it was picked up. I'm glad that they finally got it to streaming services, because I really enjoyed this show, to give you a spoiler of my opinion of the show. But as you mentioned, Brian, it got picked up for a season 2, which is strange considering you would think a series that was originally supposed to be a single film would have a definitive end and there'd be no room for a season 2. But what's fun about this is it seems like Hollywood is kind of in this new whodunit hype, trying to recreate a lot of the Agatha Christie stories. We have Kenneth Branagh adapting all those stories with Hercule Poirot. We have Rian Johnson making the Knives Out films with Benoit Blanc. And now it seems that Apple's going forward with Tiffany Haddish, Detective Danner, as this type of detective that goes around solving cases. So while I don't expect to see majority of the cast for season 2, especially considering that this season, as we mentioned, does have a definitive ending, I am really excited to see Tiffany Haddish moving forward, because her character was a lot of fun. But I've spoiled a little bit of my opinions of the show in this opening. Brian, what are some of your non-spoiler thoughts about the Afterparty?
This show is great. I mean, first off, they're half-hour episodes that just fly by. I think I watched the first, whatever it was, 4 or 5 episodes that were out in a single sitting, which was kind of unfortunate having to wait after that, because they move. And the way this show is genre hopping, every episode is basically from the perspective of a different character, very much Rashomon style, in the sense of we get to come back to the same scenes and see them from different perspectives. But the really interesting thing about this is that, like I said, we hop between every single genre imaginable. And it's kind of hard for me to believe or to think how this would work nearly as well as a movie. I think they would have to kind of condense and not do a lot of what they did. Right. So I think it kind of worked out for the best, in my opinion, that this played out this way. Because,
I mean, the benefit to adapting it to series is that they got way more time to explore the individual characters.
Right.
So, as the show progresses and we learn more about these characters and their motivations, it overall enhances the show. I definitely think making it 2 hours would have been to its detriment. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. And with this cast, every character holds their own throughout the course of these episodes and perfectly fits the genre that they're trying to encapsulate. Like any good murder mystery, nearly every character has potential motives that could make them the potential murderer. And ultimately, I felt a little bit silly about maybe not putting some of the pieces together. I feel like you may have been more hip to it than I was. We'll get into that.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Because ultimately I was like, oh, I should have known. But that tends to be the case with a lot of this stuff. But it does a good job of seeding, like laying out the path for you to look back and realize that it was, oh, obviously, but not making it obvious in the moment. I constantly just found myself wondering, why has no one ever done this sort of show before? And the fact that it was going to be a movie, it ultimately wouldn't have been a show. But hopping between all these genres, we'll get into some of my favorites later, but it just felt brilliant, even though, you know, the show itself is not like super profound in terms of opinions about life. It's a whole lot of fun, consistently hilarious.
It's great entertainment.
Oh, ridiculously entertaining throughout the whole thing. I could have binged this in a day had it all been out when I started watching it. What I really like is you have some characters who seem irredeemable and just like total assholes, that when you see things from their perspective, even though they are still assholes to some degree, you sympathize with them and you understand where they're coming from a little more, which is really nice with this kind of thing, and makes it even more tricky to figure out. You know, you're just like, oh, this asshole is obviously who did it. And then you see things from their perspective and you're like, oh, this person's got good in them. So I'm being very non-specific, gender and otherwise here to avoid pseudo spoilers. It feels so true that the way this is framed around a high school reunion and then the after party, and the subjectivity of all the baggage that everyone is bringing to these things, just not only in how they view everyone else and the rumors they've heard about what has happened to people, what hasn't happened to people. And you get a lot of good perspectives of the people. You get the person who wants to show how different they are from high school. You get the person who feels still trapped in like they've never left high school, and all these different perspectives that feel so true for anyone who's had a high school experience, and it can make it really personal. And we really didn't have a high school reunion, unfortunately. And I'm still good friends with a lot of my friends from high school, but I definitely understand this conceptually, this idea of some people, you know, those are the glory days and they wish they would be back there, right? And have become X or Y in the interim.
You want to hear something crazy, Brian, while we're on this topic?
Yeah, please.
I didn't go to my 10-year high school reunion. However, I'm coming up on my 15-year high school reunion.
Oh, man.
And it kind of blows my mind, especially considering that this story takes place at a 15-year high school reunion. So I very much could relate to what all these people were going through, regardless of, you know, like you said, what type of baggage they're bringing to this particular reunion. Chris Miller did a great job. I think each character and each archetype within the show is very true to life.
Definitely.
It's a lot of fun.
So
also makes me feel old and sad at the same time.
I can understand. I'm right there with you, very close to the 15 as well. A couple of everyone's great in it. I think the standout performances for me are Tiffany Haddish playing Detective Danner. I think she's consistently great and hilarious, and a very kind of atypical cop in terms of how she goes about doing her job and how interested she is in just the entertaining elements of the stories that she's being told. Ben Schwartz is ridiculously hilarious, surprisingly good singing voice as well. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about it in my favorite episode or my favorite episodes, but I did not know this man could sing like this. Dave Franco.
We always kind of got hints of him singing as John Ralphio. You know, he would he would harmonize. I wouldn't call it singing. It was more like harmonizing.
Right.
But he's capable. He's definitely capable of doing it.
Clearly capable.
Yeah.
Dave Franco seems like he was born to play this perfect pop star douchebag. It's just incredible. Even though you get a lot of different perspectives on his character, he remains the most true in everyone's versions of the story as just the classic asshole. There is, I'll bring it up in favorite moments, no spoilers. And then Alana Glazer. Broad City, I think she was great in that show. And here she plays like varying levels of coherent throughout the course of this show. But I think her character is one of the most interesting because everyone has an opinion on who she is, who she's become, her mental state, and a lot of judgments happening around her. And I think she plays it all really, really excellently. So I think that's pretty much my non-spoiler opinions. This show was consistently great and so easily recommendable. You'll fly through it.
Yeah, you and I are very much in alignment with how we feel about this show, Brian. I think everyone involved in the show is doing an incredible job. As you mentioned, Tiffany Haddish plays this really fun and quirky detective. Like you said, she's kind of an atypical cop, and that's kind of what we want from these type of characters. You know, when we were talking about Hercule Poirot, he has quirks. You know, and that's what makes these characters interesting. Benoit Blanc as well has weird quirks when it comes to his character. And I think in following in this tradition, I'm excited to see what Tiffany Haddish does with the character of Detective Danner going forward with various cases. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But even within this show, I mean, Sam Richardson does a great job as Anik, this kind of really nerdy guy with a missed opportunity at love during high school. But as you put it, you know, this is a very Rashomon style way of storytelling, but the most fun element is that every episode is broken up into a different genre of film. So we have romantic comedy, we have action film, we have animation, we have psychological thriller, we get kind of a police procedural at one point.
Yep, musical.
What else? A musical. If you're a fan of film, there's a lot to love about the way they genre hop, as Brian mentioned in his opinions. But yeah, this show overall is so much fun, and I cannot recommend it more. Even if you don't own any Apple devices, I think you're still able to sign up for Apple TV Plus. I know that might be a hurdle for some people, but again, we've mentioned this multiple times on the podcast. Apple TV Plus is just one of the necessary streamers at this point. All the content that they've been releasing is just solid, absolutely solid. Ted Lasso has been on our best of lists for the last 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if the Afterparty makes it potentially onto one of our lists by the end of the year. But yeah, this is just an exceptional show. Dave Franco, as you mentioned, Brian, is perfect in his role. I will say it here because it happens right away. He is the murder victim of the show. He's the Gal Gadot, if you will, like in Death on the Nile. So while he spends a large portion of the show incapacitated, what we do get to see of him is brilliant. I'm becoming a huge fan of him as a comedian, as an actor. He's done a lot of fun stuff in the last, 10, 15 years since I think I first saw him in Superbad as like a quick cameo. And at that point, he was really just like, oh, that is James Franco's brother.
Right.
He really didn't have any type of identity, but I have to say, like, he's really making a name for himself and standing out from just being James Franco's brother. So kudos.
It's definitely intentional, but his singing skills not as immediately impressive as
not as good as Ben Schwartz,
but his lyrical prowess undeniable. Just insanely crass pop music.
Yes.
Hilarious. And he's like a bad actor in the movie as well. There's so much about his character that's so fun.
Yeah. So with that, Brian, I think we should dive into spoilers and some of our favorite moments. If it's not clear and you haven't watched the Afterparty, watch it. Regardless of how you choose to do so. It's a high recommendation from both of us. So with that being said, let's jump into some of the standout moments we thought from the Afterparty. We're going to spoiler a couple of things, talk about some actual plot beats and stuff like that. Brian, what were some of your favorite moments going into the show?
The musical episode was just such a treat. I'm kind of on a musical kick recently. Just rewatched West Side Story, saw Cyrano recently, which was absolutely incredible. I was devastated afterwards.
I still need to see that.
Oh, it's incredible. And some of the songs, especially within the context of the movie, are just so nice. But Ben Schwartz, I thought these songs were actually really well written. It wasn't on the level of something like Inside by Bo Burnham, but they felt similarly kind of like insightful about what these characters are going through and the whole process of looking back on your life, meeting these high school friends. I can't remember songs specifically. There's
one song that's like you only get one chance twice or something.
Yes,
I forget the exact
stupid
name. But it's so well written.
I know.
And it's so well composed, and they're incredibly catchy, I have to say. Like, they did a great job making this musical episode.
Yes, I think there's a song too where the background singers start kind of turning against him. I can't remember this song, but that one was really a standout episode for me. Speaking to the character that becomes a little bit more relatable, Brett's episode, Ike Barinholtz. It's like a Fast and Furious style action movie where he's clearly like referencing like family and these like stereotypical like kind of trashy, silly lines, and recontextualizing a chase scene as like we thought he was like going after this guy for one reason. He was actually just trying to help his daughter.
Yeah, get back a stuffed koala. So
get
like
back a stuffed koala.
Earlier in the show, it's framed as if he's trying to chase down Sam Richardson's character Anik for attempting to make out with his ex-wife at the reunion. But
and we even get dialogue from him like, I'm going to kill you or something. Right. And he's actually just saying the koala.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Totally out of context. I'm trying to look up the names of the songs for that musical episode, Brian. Okay. I'm not having a lot of success here. So
I should have went back. Went back and got him, but that was a standout. The in the episode we were just talking about, the Brett episode, it's so stupid. It's so perfectly representative of like silly masculinity shit when him and Dave Franco's character have like a pissing contest.
A literal
pissing contest in the bathroom. It's so absurd and hilarious. It just Dave Franco's like, I was actually holding back. I still got half a tank left. It's like so fucking stupid.
So
but we get a good call back about the acoustics in bathrooms being really good. That ends up becoming relevant towards the end of the season. I thought that was a cool little writing thing there. Aside from that, detective.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, please.
My internet finally decided to work. The song that we were referring to is called Two Shots.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Go onto Spotify or Apple Music, look up Two Shots. It's absolutely hilarious. Continue, Brian.
Oh, are they on there? Oh,
yeah. I'm looking at them right now.
Check those out. Okay.
They're called Two Shots. Yeah, sure, whatever. And Three Dots from Stardom.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, that's the one where they start turning on him.
Right.
The mystery within the mystery episode with Detective Danner's episode, the police procedural one, so awesome, and it shows that she could absolutely hold a different show on her own, right?
Yeah, definitely. Also, random cameo from Fred Savage. That was great. I always love seeing him pop up in things.
Yes, definitely. And obviously that ties into her wanting to solve the crime because she sees like how corrupt the people above her in the police department are. Mm-hmm. And how, her experiences of that and why she kind of approaches things a bit differently than other cops do. Finally, poor invisible Walt.
Bro.
Okay. Just so sad. His multiple streaking attempts fucking killed me.
Yes.
Absolutely hysterical. He just
Jamie Demetriou is playing this completely invisible character, and he does such a good job of just being like this wallflower throughout the entire show. You feel so bad for him, and I have to say, I thought he was the murderer the entire show.
When he starts getting a little bit of heat, he's almost just happy to be acknowledged.
Oh yeah, yeah. The people are just paying attention to him.
It might be me.
Yeah, and the reason I thought the entire show, typically, and we might be diving into this a little prematurely because you were talking earlier about like, when my wife and I watched Death on the Nile, we realized who the murderers were within the first act of the film, but we still enjoyed the journey. The journey is what's most important in these whodunit content, but the entire show, I was like, nobody remembers who this guy is. Like, I bet you anything by the end of the show, they'll reveal that he didn't even go to their high school and that he's just some guy with a vendetta against Xavier. I was happy to be wrong because what they did with him was actually way funnier. But yeah, the entire time I thought he was the murderer up until the reveal, to be perfectly honest, because it came very close.
Yeah, for sure.
In that final episode. But yeah, he's absolutely hilarious in the show.
So what about you? What were some of your standouts?
Like I said, despite not being in a lot of the show because he's the murder victim, I thought Dave Franco was absolutely hilarious in this series, especially in the toward the latter half of the show. What it's called, is it the high school party? Is that what the name of the show is? It's when we go back in time. Over the course of the show, they refer to this party that happened in high school that kind of like set the stage for why all these people feel the way they do still 15 years later.
Right. And this is Walt's episode, right? When he's being interviewed, or is it multiple people?
It is Walt's episode, and I'm just now realizing the gag. It's not called Walt. Every other episode is titled after the character that's being interviewed, including the final episode where they interview Brett and Zoe's little 6-year-old daughter, Maggie. That episode's called Maggie.
Gosh, how cute when some of the characters are puppet versions of themselves.
It's very sweet.
A very fun choice.
But the episode where Tiffany Haddish interviews the Walt character is actually called High School Party, I believe. And this is his rendition of what happened on that night. And what kind of caused all these people to be in the headspace that they currently are in the series. But during that episode, we find out that it's alluded to that Dave Franco's character and Ben Schwartz's character had a ska band in high school. And before becoming Xavier, dude,
incredible.
I love ska music. And the entire time that they were talking about them having a ska band, my wife was literally just glaring at me. Because she was like, "Oh, this was you in high school, basically."
Ouch.
I love ska. I won't deny it.
Oh yeah, of course.
But Dave Franco plays nerdy and vulnerable so well in this episode, juxtaposed to this facade that he's putting on of like ultra pop star, doesn't care what anybody thinks, like too famous for anybody. And I just really love that they allowed him to do both. You know, super fun, in my opinion.
All of them just like blatantly being super old as well and wearing like bad wigs and stuff.
And I have to say, you know, there's this kind of trope of actors who have aged out of high school range way before playing high schoolers, you know, like Tobey Maguire in the first Spider-Man movie being in his late 20s playing like a 16-year-old. But I have to say it works. Like, I think so too. Because the show takes place in the early 2000s, the way they dressed everyone, because I'm going to say period piece because it was that long ago, but the way they dress appropriately for the period, it really did make a lot of them seem like they were high school students. I think they did a great job with wardrobe kind of achieving that look, because all these people are well above high school age.
Oh yeah, probably largely like late 30s, right? Maybe early 40s.
Absolutely.
I would have to guess.
Without a doubt.
I want to shout out in that episode something that really is there throughout the course of the whole thing in terms of how she's viewed, but Ilana Glazer's character and Dave Franco lying about sleeping with her when she was just
despicable.
Oh, and it's horrible and feels so true to high school and how people just judge you about things, and you know, the male being basically lauded for this thing while the woman is shamed. Not really what the show is ultimately about, but I feel like looking back, you really see the repercussions and how it's affected her going forward throughout the rest of her life, you know,
not only her, but him, you know, that moment was kind of a transitionary moment for him as well. For sure. Yeah. I thought that was really well handled, actually. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, that episode, as well as, you know, we spoke earlier about a lot of the feelings and baggage that these characters are bringing to this after party and this high school reunion. Like I said, it's so true to life to the point where I experienced genuine moments of discomfort because I was like, this is just really awkward. Yeah. But that's one of the things that's so great about the writing in this show, that I think you'll be able to find any character that you can relate to. There's a whole number of people that are very relatable. Brian, did you have any other standout moments for the show? You know, I think, I think it's Kelvin Yu. We don't get an episode dedicated to him, but he's the first one who sets up the gag that we see over and over of Anik's character just getting the beer spilled all over him. Yes. And that was just such a silly bit. The husband of Jennifer One. Right. Yes. So he's kind of like a side character to the cast. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought his initial bit where he sets it up and he's just like so into this prank, this stupid juvenile prank, and he's just so all in on it. And then we
But
get
I know
the
people like
daughter.
that.
Oh yeah, of course, we all do. And we get the daughter drawing the on his face as well.
The cat, yeah.
The cat on his face. Yeah. Coming back to that gag was enjoyable nearly every time.
No, it's absolutely great the way that they frame that gag in particular, because every episode tackles it. And it's hilarious because, as we said, every episode is a different genre of film. So the fact that they have this like through line bit, you get to see all the characters interact. You know, Anik is trying to figure out who did what on him over the course of the entire show.
Ultimately, has nothing to do with the murder.
But he never quite gets any of it right.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes the joke even funnier as it's revealed to the audience who was drawing what all over his body while he was unconscious.
The diarrhea game. It's a whole lot of fun. He's just trying to justify it. So uncomfortable.
So good. So how did you feel about the reveal of the actual murderer at the end of the show? Did you feel like it was the right character to pick? Do you think it was justified? What do you think?
I thought it made perfect sense looking back. It was the person who actually had the most motives, who wasn't as successful as he would have liked to be. Rented this really nice car to pretend like he was like, better than he was, getting rejected by this guy who we should have known from his perspective that things weren't going as swimmingly. But in the moment, because it's a musical, because it's so fantastical, as Detective Danner sniffs out, it really wasn't clear. And he's so hilarious, but he's also very much the one driving, wanting to listen in on what the cops are saying as well.
Very true.
So it's like, it makes so much sense, but they do a great job of keeping us so close to him and not really giving us a lot of doubt.
And that's what caused me to not once think, do we want to reveal it or do we just want to talk about it vaguely?
Well, we said it's spoilers, so I don't know.
I not once thought that Jasper, Ben Schwartz's character, was the murderer.
Same.
I actually thought, even like I thought it was Walt at one point. I thought it could have been Brett. I thought it would have been accident, maybe. Like he just tripped over the balcony and fell. At one point, I thought that maybe he accidentally killed himself. Just stumbled over the balcony wall.
I was thinking about that too, that maybe no one was the murderer. Yeah.
But out of all the amateur sleuthing that my wife and I were doing over the course of watching this show, I never once suspected Ben Schwartz. And, that's such a real treat. That's something that I really like about the show, because that doesn't happen very often for us. Usually we're able to suss out what's going to happen and who the killer is by the time we at least get to like the beginning of the third act, Right. But you're absolutely right, because the show focuses so much on Jasper and Anik and how they're listening in to all the interviews and all that stuff. It kind of lulls you into a false sense of security with these two characters. And you would never suspect that, while Anik, basically the entire show is being accused of being the murderer, you would never think that his best friend Jasper was actually the one that did it, because they're best friends.
Right.
So I thought it was a great twist, and I didn't see it coming. And whenever I can get that to happen in a show, 5 stars for
Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
this is
job.
what this genre is about. Just such a treat. Like I just want to tell people about this show. It seems so easily sellable, it's very fresh. Like we've said, I don't know how much more we have to say about it, but
I think we did a great job of covering all the things that we really loved about the show.
Yeah.
I personally don't have anything negative to say about the show. Do you, Brian?
There's very little. The thing is, because we focus on a different character every episode, obviously we're coming outside of the stories being told at times, but at around 30 minutes per episode, it really feels like, even though we're going through different scenes, sometimes there's so much different that we're getting exposed to every episode. And I think that helps with the one major inconsistency about like which direction that Jasper comes in from at some point. It's during the scene where, like we said, the major gag that keeps recurring. So you're focused so much on the gag. You're not worried about this thing.
The crazy thing is it's presented so many times.
I know. Yeah, you see it over and over, right? So you think, yeah, it's brilliantly done. It really is.
Agreed. So I think that's going to do it for the after party. We're fans. We can't wait to see season 2. Brian, do you have any final thoughts that you want to mention before we close this thing out?
Take my money. Give it to me now. I'm ready. Tiffany Haddish, she's killing it.
She is. She's doing a really good job. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Pop-O-Holics, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Go watch the after party. Email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. Tell us what you think. Reach out to us on our Twitter at Pop-O-Holics. Brian, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at True Pop-O-Holic for breaking news that may or may not be real about new casting for Oppenheimer.
I can't wait to see Cousin Skeeter in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. It's very brave to cast a puppet in
and he was honestly, he was blackballed by the industry, and I'm glad that Nolan is giving him a chance because
see him get some work after so many years.
He's really been struggling as of late.
Loyal listeners and viewers, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic book, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. And then, of course, as I mentioned, you can find Pop-O-Holics on Twitter at Pop-O-Holics. You can find us on Instagram at Pop-O-Holicscast. You can email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com. And then, of course, you can find the audio version of this on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on any popular podcast platform. That's going to do it, Brian. We will see you next week with, what are we going to be covering?
Next week, we are covering the latest Pixar movie coming to Disney Plus, Turning Red.
Can't wait. We'll see you next time on...